Kick-Ass tells the story of an ordinary teenager played by Aaron Taylor Johnson who sets out to become a real-life superhero, calling himself Kick-Ass. Dave, the character that Aaron Taylor Johnson plays, gets caught up in a bigger fight when he meets Big Daddy, played by Nicolas Cage, who is a former cop who, in his quest to bring down the crime boss, um, played by Mark Strong, and his son, Red Mist, has trained his 11-year-old daughter, Chloe Grace Moretz, to be the ruthless vigilante hit girl. All right, so a couple things that I want to say before I dive into this review. I remember back when I had cable TV, I one of the network channels that was playing it was playing Kick Ass, this film, and I remember the only thing I remember Aaron Taylor Johnson in a high school, and he, like every other superhero movie, he has a crush on this girl in high school, kind of like Peter Parker, and Mary Jane. He has the best friend who's kind of like Harry Osborn. Um, and this movie introduced me to well, a lot of actors who I know now. Right, I mean nowadays I know them. But it introduced me to Aaron Taylor Johnson as an actor, but also Chloe Grace Moretz. Like, this is the first movie I've seen with Chloe Grace Moretz. Like, this movie introduced me to her as an actress, and she was very young. She's very young in this film, and I thought she was great. But yeah, and this movie, by the way, by the way, this movie has both Quicksilvers. It's funny that this movie has both Aaron Taylor Johnson and Evan Peters, who would later, both of them would later play two versions of Quicksilver. Aaron would be from the MCU Age of Ultron, and then Evan Peters in the X-Men movies. But yeah, it's something very funny to really think about. But yeah, this movie is actually pretty brutal and very violent. I do remember the scene. Back then, I do remember seeing the scene. I believe Big Daddy, Nicolas Cage. I think he got like kidnapped or abducted, and I think he died. But that was like back then. But those memories was like back then. So this was a rewatch. And yeah, so let's dive into this film, shall we? So I like how it's almost completely accurate to the source material, adapting many scenes from the comic series. Kick-Ass himself is a very likable character, backed up by a great performance by Aaron Taylor Johnson. There are some awesome action scenes, especially during the exciting climax. Hit Girl herself, played by Chloe Grace Moretz, is a badass, and the child acting from Chloe is it's great. Nicolas Cage. I mean, what can I say about Nicolas Cage? He's great. He does a great job portraying Big Daddy, as he has a great backstory that makes him likable, but not exactly in the right, in the right in the mind. There are some hilarious comedy that parodies common superhero tropes and more. I want to say like Deadpool, but I'm not really sure about that. But yeah, like and also the costume designs. The costume designs are pretty great, with Big Daddy's costume in particular being like a nice parody of Batman's costume, because I remember like Big Daddy's costume is it kind of like I remember like the first time I watched this movie before I read the comics. So I was like, I was reading, excuse me, I was watching the movie and I was like, Big Daddy, like Nicolas Cage, his costume, his superhero costume looks kind of like Batman. Like, but yeah, one scene in this film, in this movie, is completely done in a comic book style. And you know what I mean if you've seen this film, and it's amazing. It's very well done and executed, and also the great tease for the motherfucker, which what a name! What a great name for a villain. I'm the motherfucker. That's great. The villain of the follow up comic series at the end was a very nice and amazing touch. And for the first and for the time it was, for the time, like this movie came out in 2010. For the time it was it was a definite unique take on the superhero film genre, as this type of superhero film hasn't exactly been done before. I mean, like the 2010s, my god, like DC, you had like, I mean, for DC, you really had like, you had the Halle Berry Catwoman movie, which was atrocious, one of the worst films, if not the worst comic book films of all time. Um, I think it might be like the worst for me. That movie was so offensive, but yeah, you had that. You had like, the Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight, the Dark Knight. No, you got Batman Begins, and then you had The Dark Knight, and then you had one Superman movie. Um, Marvel had like the X-Men movies, the Blade movies, Elektra, Jennifer Gardner's Elektra, Ben Affleck's Daredevil, and the two Jessica Alba and Michael Chiklis and Chris Evans Fantastic Four movies, and then you know, you had Ghost Rider, which also starred Nicolas Cage. So yeah, like Marvel. So yeah, superhero comic book movies just it wasn't. It was very it's just, yeah, it just didn't have. I guess this type of parody, if you will, has never been done before. If you think about it, back then. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But I guess for the negatives, I mean, this movie did receive a bunch of tons of controversy thanks to the offensive content, and it isn't exactly a film for everyone. I will say that. It's not very suitable because this film. I love what Matthew Vaughn has done with this film. But it did garnered a lot of controversy for its profanity and violence performed by a child, and that child is named Chloe Grace Moretz, who plays Hit Girl. So yeah, a lot of offensiveness and controversy. So take that if you will. So I don't. So you might be offended. You might be like, or you might be like, whatever. It's a film, no big deal. That's your opinion. And there are some changes from the origin story. Like, for example, in the comic book, Mindy's mother is later revealed to be alive, and what Big Daddy said about her wife being dead was a lie. But in the movie, Mindy's mother is actually died. Um, but it's a fictional comic book, like it just like Marvel and DC comic books. I don't really care. Like Marvel and DC comic books, they do a lot of different versions of different characters, and I'm like, it doesn't really matter. I'm like, nope, it's no big deal for me. Might be for like hardcore fans of the comics, but for me, whatever. uh but yeah, like great performances by Mark Strong, Nicolas Cage, Chloe Grace Moretz, Aaron Taylor Johnson, all around really. This film gained a strong cult following since its release on DVD and Blu-ray, and a sequel. This film generated it it was successful enough to create to make a sequel. And Matthew Vaughn last month, uh, January, Matthew Vaughn announced that a third film titled School Fight. He won't be directing it, unfortunately, but it will be directed by Damian Walters. Had secretly been greenlit, cast, and had completed filming. So it's just a matter of time for the film to be released officially in theaters, and the trailers and the marketing to start being generated. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's my thoughts of Kick Ass. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking time to listen to my review. I appreciate it. And I'd appreciate it more if you like and subscribe, especially subscribe, because when you subscribe to my channel, you be helping my channel by tons, by a bunch, by millions. I don't know. But thank you so much, everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. Peace.